I would like to open today with an acknowledgement of the Indigenous people to whom this land belonged before any of us. Those tribes that we know of being the Osage, the Shawnee, and Miami. Good afternoon, and thank you for being with us here today. We are the 8th grade integrated English language arts and social studies team. Mr. Allender, Mr. Metz, Ms. McComas, Mr. Reister, Ms. Roselle, Ms. Purdue, Ms. Brand, Ms. Kempton, and I are all incredibly proud of the work our students have put into this event. Over the last 5 weeks, all of our 8th grade students have been working as reconcilers while studying the cultural divides that led to the American Civil War so that they could host this forum with all of you in an effort to close those divides within their own communities. The job of a reconciler is to step into a situation, often uncomfortable, and work to bring peace, justice, and unity through honest dialogue, patience, and forgiveness. This is not an easy task, but the 8th graders before you have taken it on courageously. They have studied the conditions that foster a civil war, which are as follow: entrenched national polarization, abandonment of responsibility by political leadership, legitimization of violence, divisive press coverage, and weakened institutions. During this forum, they will be addressing each of these topics individually, as well as looking at the effect they have on a society when they intersect. Moving through this forum will require honesty, patience, and forgiveness from everyone in the room. Due to the cultural divides that exist within the communities in which we reside, there is already broken trust among us. There are existing prejudices that say that this work is just schoolwork and that it doesn't really matter to the world outside of this building. To those attitudes, we ask that you suspend your disbelief and really try to see that the work that has been done to get us to this point is real, important, and will bring about a change. After all, the first step to changing your world is changing your mind about your world. With that, we are simply elated to be able to turn this event over to the students who worked so hard to pull it off. Please give a warm welcome to Maddie Allen.
Good afternoon. My name is Maddie Allen, and I am part of the Guardians of the Strength and have investigated the sellout or abandonment of responsibility by political leadership. I am honored to be representing this topic today in this discussion. Please help me welcome one of our guest speakers, Mr. Anthony Smith, Superintendent of Winton Woods City Schools.
Thank you, Maddie. One of the reasons that I wanted to be here today is because anytime students of Winton Woods City Schools decides to have a forum, a conversation about what happens in the nation, I'd like to be part of that conversation. So I'm excited to give my views and my opinions, and hopefully it will be something that you will really understand and resonate with you for many years to come. Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Mikkel Feeder, and I'm a part of the Guardians of the Strength and have analyzed increasingly divisive press coverage. I'm honored to represent this topic today in this discussion. Please give a hand for one of our guest speakers, Chief Neil Fertelman of the Green Hills Police Department.
Thanks for having me here, and I think it's very important to have this discussion because I think it's very important that it go only one way, that we go increasingly away from the dangers of any additional civil war. It's so important to all of us to recognize that it doesn't matter what we look like, it doesn't matter what our gender is, it doesn't matter what our beliefs are, or even our profession, that we all need to strive to work together as human beings and good citizens and get along as best that we possibly can for our own future happiness and the happiness of our families. Thank you.
Hello everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Kaylee Sanders. I am part of the WOOPAC. I have analyzed legitimization of violence, and I am honored to represent this topic in this discussion today. Please give a hand for Alfie Jones, member of the Forest Park Fire Department.
Thank you for having me and having us as a panel. Me being a citizen of the community, I like to be involved with the school district and the students and see what's being produced. This topic is pretty deep topic, and I'm surprised to see eighth graders involved with this. I would expect this to be at a college campus, so I'm very impressed with the work that you guys are doing. I hope to see you guys, eighth graders, in the AGS program next year, so we can continue this process. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Tavon Simons. I'm part of the Wolfpack. I've analyzed weakened institutions, and I'm honored to represent this topic in our discussion today. And I'll give this back to Ms. Owens.
Thank you. Before we hear any more from our panelists, we want to hear from you. You're going to respond to a few statements on the board. I want you to respond with a strongly agree, so that's going to be a red triangle if you strongly agree. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Good afternoon, my name is Janaya Lewis. My Big Five topic was legitimization of violence as an end way to conduct, discuss, and solve disputes. To summarize, this means to allow violence to solve problems. We came across situations like this all the time in today's world. For example, there was a riot in Ferguson due to a young African-American man being shot by a white police officer. As recent as August 9, 2014, it's believed this riot was used as a way to bring attention to the situation so that justice could be put into place. Putting information from my infographic, it has been determined that the success rate of a peaceful protest is much higher than a violent one, while the rate of failure is way higher. Now I'm proud to introduce Ms. Ruckus, the Vice President of the Winton City School Board.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, and thank you, Janaya, for the introduction. I'm so very happy to be here because I am a part of your village. And because I am a board member, I'm also responsible to show up when I'm asked to show up. So thank you for having me. And also this forum provides an opportunity for me to learn from you and from you all to learn from your village. So I'm very happy to be here, and this topic is very important because you have to show up and be a part of the solution to many of our societal problems.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Patterson. I'm a part of the Wolfpack. My theme that I researched was in Transnational Polarization. My topic means there are people who have strong opinions about their beliefs in politics and are very stubborn in their view and will not easily be persuaded. I see this in the U.S. with Republicans and the Democrats with very different opinions on things such as how U.S. money should be spent. The Republicans believe the U.S. money should go towards big businesses than helping the actual government. The Democrats feel like they should raise taxes and help the government progress. Please welcome Bishop Victor S. Cousins of Inspirational Bible Church.
Well, thank you, Mr. Patterson. I wanted to be here today because as a pastor, I see people in all stages and phases of life. But more importantly, honestly, as a black man that has had the privilege of being able to travel around the world, I'm watching how our nation is continuously becoming polarized because of some of the thoughts and ideologies that are continuously precipitated. So I am excited to be here, not only to contribute to the conversation, but also to learn from your worldview. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So, now it's time for the forum, or for the survey. The statements address a number of socio-political topics like the ones you've been studying in class. Adults are welcome to participate in the survey. I will read each of the 12 statements aloud to you. You have 20 seconds to select an answer. You have 20 seconds. Please remember, red triangle is strongly agree. Blue diamond is agree. Yellow circle is disagree. and green square is strongly disagree. The symbols and meanings will stay the same the entire survey. All Americans have equal access to opportunity. Panelists, we ask that you pay special attention to the results because this is going to be your first talking point. It is harder to be a woman than a man in society today. Statement 3. It is harder to be a person of color than a white person in society today. Red is strongly agree, blue is agree, yellow is disagree, green is strongly disagree. Number 4. All people of color are disadvantaged similarly, regardless of racial or ethnic background. The clothing you wear sends a message about your belief system. The clothing you wear sends a message about your belief system. People are hypersensitive about clothing choices of others. People are hypersensitive about the clothing choices of others. MAGA hats are divisive. MAGA hats are divisive. Black Lives Matter t-shirts are divisive. The Confederate flags represent states' rights and the pride of the Confederacy. The Confederate flag is a symbol of hate and white supremacy. The Confederate flag should be flown freely and without judgment. The Confederate flag should be outlawed. Thank you so much for participating in our survey. Panelists, we would like you to start today's discussion by reacting to the survey. So if you saw a particular question that you thought was jarring or shocking, or some results that you thought were interesting, we would like you to start by commenting on that.
We'll do a quick rundown of the questions, was what was asked. Question 1, all Americans have equal access to opportunity. 51, this is not percentages. 51 strongly agree, 26 agree, 44 disagree, 30 strongly disagree to all Americans have equal access to opportunity.
I appreciate the word opportunity. I'm not sure if by opportunity we also mean equality. Because two people can have the same opportunity, but if they're not really starting from the same starting place, do they actually really have the same opportunity? Versus if two people are starting from the exact same place, they have all of the exact same resources, I think that's going to impact the outcome of whatever it is that they're going after. So I think there's a difference between having the same opportunity, but also having the same measure of equality to truly be able to negotiate whatever the opportunity is.
I agree Bishop Cousins. At this age, I guess I'm not really surprised with, at this level, with the numbers of 51% agreeing, with 51% agreeing, because you have awesome educators and teachers and administrators who are here that are really working to make sure that you have the opportunities to, that the opportunities are equal. But as you get older, I believe that you will start to run into some situations where you will notice that there's some differences. And at this age, you all probably recognize when sometimes you talk to your friends and they tell you about their experiences and they tell you about some of the things that they're involved in. You may question and say, well, how did they get connected with that? So I think as you get older and you start to pay attention and you become hungry for opportunities, you will see where there's some disparities among you and different groups. So all I say is keep your eyes open and make sure that you position yourself to take advantage of opportunities that present themselves. And it starts right here.
I agree with both panelists, but there's another part of this. Raise your hand if you've ever been in trouble before. All right. So what you need to look for when there is a conflict or you're being part of a conflict, are you receiving the same consequence as another person? Because if you're not, then that's when you know your opportunity is being challenged, because you're not getting the same chance to retool yourself when things have gone wrong. So again, raise your hand if you know you've done some things that you shouldn't have done, but you got a different consequence than someone else. Okay, that's what you need to be looking for, the disparity between the two.
All right, we'll take a look at another question here. This is, all people of color are disadvantaged similarly, regardless of racial or ethnic background. Again, all people of color are disadvantaged similarly, regardless of racial or ethnic background. Now, one more time, these are not percentages. This is of the total. So 24 students of the total strongly agree. 62 students agree. 36 students disagree. And 26 students strongly disagree. So if we bulk it in half, either I agree or disagree, we've got 86 agrees and 62 disagree. It would be 86 to 62.
I believe that statement is true to a certain extent. As an African American woman, there are certain things and certain experiences that I have had that I know that I'm going to walk into with certain expectations and biases against myself. The system of this country is run by predominantly non-people, persons of color. So if we're real with ourselves, we recognize that there are some differences. So I do believe that, when you look at whether or not you're African American, you're Hispanic, that there are certain expectations or there are certain assumptions that may be made because you are a person of color. Now, what does that mean to you? That just means that you have to do things in excellence and you have to show them something different. I do believe that as you get older, you will understand that this system of inequality is not going to be new to you, but you have to find ways to get around it and rise above any challenges that come your way.
Hi, I'm Tommy Mays, and I had a question. For many years, there has been various attempts to fix our education system. Why does it seem to be that schools who serve minority students or students who come from poor communities receive the least amount of funding? What can we do to fix this? Thank you.
First, come back up to the mic, please. Thank you. I think your question was a great question, but I think the other parts of the question is how much does your community fight to make you equal to other communities? If they decide that that's where you belong and there's no one fighting for you to build better schools, build opportunities, and making sure that the government funds you in a more equitable way, then that's where you'll be. So your leaders have to stand up and make it equal to other organizations and other communities. Otherwise, you'll just kind of suffer and you'll be in an inferior situation forever. So it depends on what your leaders do, because as students, you have a voice, but there are people that are put in positions to help recognize what your voices are. So I think the panel today, I think one of the major messages the panel is going to give you today is you have strong voices. You need to use your voices. And here's an example. Raise your hand if you believe you needed new schools. Okay. But at the other hand, what you needed to do is to encourage your parents to come out and vote to make sure that you receive new schools, because you couldn't vote. How many of you encouraged your parents to vote when it was time to vote? That's your voice. That's your strength. That's your power. And that's how you get the equality. Thank you.
I agree with everything Mr. Smith said, and he's in a better position to comment on it than I am. The only thing I would add is that as a whole, we have to take another look at how public education is funded, which is primarily through property taxes. And so when you have communities that the value of homes, and this leads into a whole nother conversation about why home ownership is important, but when you have communities that are primarily transient communities, so most people are renting houses, they're renting apartments, and et cetera, there's not seen by the state or the local county a lot of value in those homes, and so the property tax is low. Versus you go to other places where the square footage is a little larger or what have you, more homeowners, then they have more funds to work with because of the way public education is funded. So I would encourage you all, use your voice and the power of the pen. This is a great time for you to definitely be encouraging your parents to vote. And in addition to that, write to Governor Mike DeWine and ask him what is he going to do to make sure that public education is funded in a way that's not solely tied to home values, which are continuing to slide based on, color, gentrification, and et cetera.
And I'll just add on to what Superintendent Smith and Bishop Cousins have said. When you have an issue, you really need to understand the whole system. You need to understand how it's set up, how is it made. And yes, we can do things at the local level. We can do things by reaching out to our governor, but you also have state legislators, you also have congressmen, and you need to understand, and women, and you need to understand what are their views. So it's good if you encourage your parents to vote, but if the individuals who are making those laws are not aligned with what it is that you want or what it is that your parents want, it's not doing us any good. So we have to make sure that we get the right people in positions of power to be able to make those decisions that benefit us. It's a level of shared accountability. You do what you're supposed to do by encouraging your parents to vote. Your parents do what they're supposed to do to vote, and to make sure that they research to make sure who are the right people that we need to put in place to be able to bring about a change that will benefit our students and our community.
Okay. I agree with all of the candidates, especially with encouraging your parents to vote, and within voting for new schools, because children are the future. We are the future of every place we're at. And with encouraging your parents to vote for new schools, come better with better education, and we also would want better people to run our schools, so we'd have better people teaching our children about things they need to learn in life. And yeah.
I definitely agree with what everyone has said. To be honest, your voice is as loud as you make it. So if you decide to be quiet, then whatever is going on in your community, in your world, is going to stay that way until you decide to make a change, until you decide to bring out your community, to bring out the good people there to make a change. Change only starts when someone makes it.
Hello, my name is Jamie Wilson, and my question is, a report on the 2012 U.S. presidential election claims that negative news coverage toward Obama was 17% higher than his opponent Romney. Given that, can you elaborate on the reason why several news outlets collectively show bias towards the same idea/group?
I'll take a stab at that one. I definitely think there was a lot of bias there. But one thing that I would encourage you all to do as you become immersed and involved in what's happening in our political world as well as what's in our community, you need to follow the money and follow the power. And anytime you have someone that is saying things that could upset the balance of power and control versus reality that we're living in, you know, you're saying, well, I'm starving over here, but these individuals don't seem to hear me. You know, you have to ask yourself, what is the risk? What is the risk of them hearing me? What will they lose? And I think President Obama represented a voice that represented a lot of people, which could mean that there could be some resources that would be redirected away from other areas that had been funded for a while. And quite frankly, he brought to life a lot of the issues and gave a voice to some of the things that the country was feeling. And that can be sometimes very threatening. And as you all become more immersed in finding your voice, you will find that sometimes you have to say some things that will make people uncomfortable. How many of you said something that made others uncomfortable? Okay, and you felt like you had to stand by yourself. That's leadership. Sometimes you have to speak truth to power, and I believe that's what President Obama did. He spoke truth to power, and they noticed that he had a following, and such the negative publicity to try and hold on to that power continued.
I'll also like to add that the way that we share information, negative information, of course, on our social media platforms is feeding them more viewers and more popularity, basically. And it's going to them and it's telling them, like, okay, we should do this over and over again. We should keep on bringing out this negative stuff because people are reacting to it and they're coming to our channel and watching it over and over again. So for us to keep on sharing things on social media that we don't really like, it's not really helping as much as it's really making them repeat it over and over again.
One last point. Media doesn't run off of opinion. Media runs off of dollars and cents. So imagine you are the president of a local TV station and someone is going to pay you $20 million to run an ad. Would you run the ad? Yes, you would run the ad. So the other part of it, it depends on what kind of dollars were funneled into the media to say, tell this story, regardless if it's true or not. So everyone's heard this new term out there called fake news, right? So anything that we don't like, we call it fake news. And if the media says, okay, I can take your money and run your story, well, guess what? That's the advertisement dollars. That's what media does. Media can't run just by the pure fact that it says here's a good story. There has to be dollars that support the story. So maybe that's the difference in what happened with Mitt Romney and President Obama and how the stories ran.
Hola, yo me llamo Yasmin y mi pregunta es esta. Para muchos afroamericanos en los Estados Unidos, el número de personas desarmadas asesinadas por la policía crean temor. Sin embargo, los afroamericanos no son los únicos que le temen a la policía. Los latinos también le temen. ¿Cómo puede nuestra comunidad ayudar a crear una relación más confiable entre la policía y estos grupos minoritarios? For those of you who don't speak Spanish, my name is Jasmine, and here's my question. For many African Americans in the U.S., the number of unarmed individuals killed by the police creates fear. However, African Americans are not the only individuals who fear the police. Latinos fear them too. How can our community help to create a more trusting relationship between the police and these minority groups?
To be honest, oppression only comes when a superior finds itself with someone who they think is inferior. So let's say I feel superior to someone in the crowd. I'm going to use that superiority over them. And that's how it rolls. But to be honest, if you feel inferior, the only way to level out the playing is for you to stand up, for you to show them that they can't push you. So for these minorities, it's not only for the police to lighten up, it's for those minority groups to show that they are genuinely good people, to show that they're good for the world, and they're not just people who need to be pushed around for a certain reason because of their skin, because of their nationality. To be honest, you can't choose your nationality, neither can you choose where you're from or where you're born. It just happens by nature. So the only way for you to feel less inferior is for you to make yourself less inferior.
I think also we live in a very changing world, and I think that is a good change. If you look at the leadership of law enforcement across the United States, you're seeing African American police chiefs in major cities. You never saw that before. You're seeing more officers of color. You're seeing more inclusion and diversity in law enforcement. And with that comes increasing training, such as a new buzzword, but it's a very effective one, is de-escalation, where I think that the world was very, very different back at the time of the first Civil War, where we delineated people by color, by where they lived, by their economic status. I think that there are changes today that we recognize that you can't tell a bad guy or a bad person by how they look or what color that they are. And I think that we are moving towards a more enlightened world, and that can only be a very good thing.
Okay, so when I look at this question, I just think of how many African Americans get shot by the police each year, and for us to make a change, we need to speak, and for these other groups, Latinos and Hispanics, it's like people don't make a big deal out of it when something happens, and I don't think it's right for a police officer to think they need to shoot somebody because they move their hand or something. So I think we need to come together and speak, because we're not going to make a change if we don't speak, and we just need to, police officers need to look into stuff and get their facts right and understand, like, if you move your hand, it ain't like I'm about to hurt you or nothing. So yes, I agree with you guys.
I'll just quickly add that whenever it comes down to diverse populations, whether it's law enforcement, whether it's the school district, whether it's employment at a corporation, like I said, we have to have a level of shared accountability. So if you're a part of that organization, and according to this question, we're talking about law enforcement, but if you notice that there's an increase of Latino populations coming in, I think you have to be very intentional in your strategies to try and connect with the community and try to build trusting relationships with the community, whether it's something in social events, whether it's something else. Just, not just, oh, you're going to engage us when there's a problem, but find ways to really get to know each other. One example of this that I hear often in a community is the community of Springdale. When they noticed that there was an influx of Latino families coming in, they made very intentional strategies to try and build a community around those individuals to begin to build trust. So bottom line is intentional and bringing engagement that helps us know each other better.
So as a pastor, I have presided over the funeral of 2 black men that died at the hands of the police. In 2000, here in Cincinnati, a young man by the name of Roger Owensby, and then a few years ago, a young man who lost his life at the hands of the Beaver Creek police at a Walmart in Beaver Creek, Ohio, named John Crawford III. It was painful sitting with their families, but what was more painful than that is us as minorities not realizing that there's a higher level of vigilance that we have to operate in. So as minorities, we do have to come together, and we have to stick together, and we have to have conversation and community, but we also have to be real about the fact that America is just not to the place where we can do what other people do. Something as simple as walking down the street, something as simple as playing with a toy gun in Walmart, who sells toy guns. So since we know that there is a higher level of target that is on minorities, we honestly just have to make sure that we are being very, very conscious about our vigilance, being very conscious about when we interact with the police. I have 2 black sons, and we have this conversation all the time about what to do if you're pulled over. You can't be smart mouth talking, and etc. And so it is very, very important that while we operate in the realm of ideology, that we also operate in the realm of reality, and that if you are a minority, then there is going to unfortunately be a higher level of target on you. Most police officers are great people. Some of my best friends are police officers. We have them in our churches. We have them in Green Hills, Forest Park, all over the nation. And so it's not so much that the police is to blame as much as it is the continual rhetoric that is stirred in divisiveness and racism that pits us against each other. And until we overcome that, as minorities, we have to do all of the other things that have been suggested on this panel, but we also have to make sure that we are vigilant and we operate in the realm of reality.
Hello, my name is Yusuf Hatter, and approximately 11.4 million people depend on health care provided by the Affordable Care Act. Despite these numbers, members of Congress and the President are fighting to get rid of this health care coverage. What should our leaders be doing to ensure that people across the United States do not lose access to their affordable health care?
So I think a big part of this has something to do with our president, because he's doing things that aren't beneficial to all of us, and for all of us to keep healthcare, he needs to think about how what he's doing is going to be beneficial to us. Like when he's putting up the wall or something like that, that's not even cool to do. So I think our president and the leaders behind the president need to think about us and everyone that is not just that don't just live in our country, and they need to think about how healthcare can spread and how it can benefit us all.
I definitely agree with you, Kaylee, because the president we have is, like, we all know that a lot of things that he's done is very non-beneficial for our country. But to be honest, it's nearly in the past because we've made it so far over the past years, knowing that not a lot has been changed in our country, but it's kind of now in the past. So we need to just forge forward. To be honest, you can't forget about the past, but you can forget about how it hurts you. But you have to remember about what it taught you. To be honest, I don't think that now that we've known what his true intentions were, I don't think a lot of people would vote for him for a second term. I don't think that a lot of people would go to the poll and say, yeah, let's vote for Donald Trump for one more term. I think that now that we've seen his true intentions, people are going to definitely think again about whether or not we want him as a president again. So I just think that we just need to choose wisely about who we put in office, or people, or who we put to be our public figures, because they're definitely going to be the ones who represent us in office.
I agree with both of the candidates, and yes, they should think, the president and the people behind the president should think of what benefits us, what benefits the people, and what benefits the people that are coming into our country. And I think if he thinks of what can benefit us more, I think we would have a better community overall, and I think it would help healthcare a lot.
Thank you.
As we come to the close of our forum, I would first like you to give a round of appreciation applause to all of the people who came out to speak with you today. Your 8th grade English teachers and your social studies teachers want to thank you for the work that you have put into this project. We want to thank you for the time that you spent with us. We want to remind you that the job of a reconciler is to step into a situation which is often uncomfortable and work to bring peace, justice, and unity through honest dialogue, patience, and forgiveness. This is not an easy task. We hope that you move through this community and this life with honesty, patience, and forgiveness. We know that cultural divides exist. We also know that they can be closed. We know that we can move from being a society of us's and them's and those peoples and others to a society that celebrates unity and we. We see the effects of existing prejudices that say that this work is just schoolwork and that it doesn't really matter to the world outside of this building. We live in that effect that wants us to believe that we are irreconcilably different, that there's no way that the us's and the them's could ever create a society of we. We urge you to permanently suspend your disbelief, see that this work is real, important, and unfinished. After all, the first step to changing your world is changing your mind about it. Thank you for attending our community forum.